First of all, a few confessions. So I'm not a self-identified DevOps person. I am an application developer. I'm a product developer. I build products and put them live. Sorry, I'll try not to walk around too much and cause feedback. I've also only been in the industry developing software for about 20 years. So, in real terms for developing or for doing anything professional, 20 years isn't actually that long. We seem to elevate people very quickly in software and put them up in front of people to talk. So you should take everything I say with a complete grain of salt. And I could be talking complete rubbish. I don't mind. Come and tell me later. I won't bite your head off. It's fine. I take criticism well, I believe. Especially if it includes beer. I don't take criticism from my wife, apparently. But so this has been one of the hardest presentations for me to write in recent time. Like, I had this idea running around in my head for a while, and I wanted to get it down on paper, and some people would have seen a tweet earlier on this week of me going, oh my God, I can't put this down very well. So I apologize about that. And I have a theory to share, and I'm not sure you're all going to agree, and that's fine, but I hope it'll at least make you think. But only a little bit, because obviously it's the end of the day, and all of your brains have actually turned off. We've had a long day so far. And also a few warnings. So I may offend a couple of people, because obviously I'm going to tell you that DevOps is dead. And I apologize if halfway through the talk I've made you think that you should all just go run screaming for the hills. That's not my intention. I think you're all awesome. I should make sure I say that. You are doing awesome things. And I apologize if I rag on DevOps a little bit at some points in the talk. That's not my point. So what's my theory? Does it actually want to go forward? Come on. Yay. So my theory is that DevOps is a role and a position and a thing that actually never existed. That we actually made it all up. Nobody ever did DevOps. There wasn't a thing called DevOps. Nothing happened. The cake is a lie. It was made up by the man. Etc., etc., etc. So why do I say this? And why might this be true? So let's take a stroll back through the sands of time. 10 years ago, infrastructure as a service started with AWS. I'm sure there were other infrastructure as a service before AWS, but AWS is about 10 years ago. This is all folklore. This is all history. We kind of just know this happened now. But very few people actually know what it was like or remember what it was like to ship software back in those days. If I want to tell this story, I might don my pipe and put my pipe in, don my hat and slippers, start the story with, back in my day, Sonny, we had physical servers on premise running our code. No, I'm sure of how the back office, that guy from hell, ruled the service stack with his iron fist. But there was actually little realization of what that actually meant. Well, there is little realization of what that actually meant. What it meant to actually ship on physical medium. I'm pretty sure the first computer I had a 5.5-inch floppy disk. How many people have actually run software off a 5.5-inch floppy disk still in this room? Okay, you're still around. It's cool. We're still alive. That's good. Yeah, cassette. That's cool. Yeah, I did have one of those. But that's cool. I remember my first word processor that I had to install that came with a warning, fonts will take 1 megabyte of space. I want to tell my kids about this, and they're just going to look at me like I'm daft. It's like that old image of, of the cassette player and the pen, and you have to ask your kids, why did these two go together? Because they don't remember about having to spool the tape back into the cassette. Or imagine what it was like to ship on one of these, completely write-only media. The things that you actually had to send off to a factory. Your releases were about putting bits to a factory where they were printed onto a cartridge, send it out the door. This isn't actually that long ago. Cartridges aren't that long ago. But there was no internet. There was no sending things over the wire. There was no rinse and wash again, So during all this time, the one thing that all of our software businesses have been trained to do is fear the cost of releasing. This operations teams became really good at risk awareness. I got it pointed out to me that some of this might have come from Sarbanes-Oxley as well. This separation of what you do in a business. The best software companies in the world weren't about getting really fast releases. They were actually just about getting that one release right. without bugs so that they could actually ship the software to the customer because they weren't do-overs. Or, you know, you couldn't ship again. You had to ship and then wait enough time, maybe, you know, like a year before you could do your next release. And these things cost money, like these prints cost money, but really they cost an inordinate amount of time. But it didn't really matter, because it was tiddles all the way down. Every single company was moving just as slow. I mean, it's true. Like, Microsoft was an amazing company because it could release word processor once a year. You know, nowadays that wouldn't kind of mark you out from the crowd. There was tons of QA to go through, bounds of red tape, because your choices had to be right. There really wasn't a second chance. There wasn't a do-over. There wasn't a point release, a beta release. You couldn't ship non-working code to your customer. Nowadays, you might be able to get away with that. But as I say, everyone was just as slow, from the biggest companies to the small. The yearly cadence was pretty much all you could ask for. The trouble was, we did get a better medium. I guess trouble is kind of a double-edged sword. Trouble for business. We got good networks. We got to ship products over this thing called the internet. We're able to become agile. We're being ushered into this new world of bits over the wire, of regular release cadence, of disruption. All these air quote words, you know. We'll get into lean startup mode at some point, you know. Success was being shifted. It was no longer about shipping the right thing. Well, it wasn't about shipping bug-free software, sorry. It was about shipping just enough for your customer to work out if they'd bloody well pay for it or not. That was about all that really success was moderated on. And if you could do that faster with less money, then you won the race. Now, meanwhile, on the other side of the equation, the hardware side. So hardware's always had problems, right? Hardware has this one thing that's holding it back a little bit. It's the pesky little thing called the atom. You know, you can't really shift atoms down a copper wire particularly well. I tried it, just didn't come out right the other end. You know, maybe we're going to get to prefabricated servers at some point, you know, where you put it into a 3D printer. But not in my lifetime, you know. I'm presuming I live quite a while, don't worry. So we still have to physically build those servers. Somebody has to have a data center somewhere. Somebody has to put that server, slot it into a machine, put the right cards in, make sure you got the right DIN settings. I don't know, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've had to build a server. And that's another point. So instead we started to abstract on top of the hardware. We started to use software to fake ourselves into believing that we were doing something special with hardware. We had this thing called virtual machines. I remember when VMware came out with their virtual machine kind of cluster, I was like, mind blown. What do you mean I can run 15 machines on one server? That makes no sense. But that's awesome. I'll do that. We're able to slice and dice that hardware up into many different components. And, you know, then we got infrastructure as a service. What do you mean I have to pay that much to rent a server? No, sorry. What do you mean I can have it on demand? We could lease parts of it. We could get these resources, and they would be virtual resources that we could use. And it was awesome, you know. Infrastructure as a service has changed the way that we deliver software. It's allowed us to experiment much, much quicker, get hardware up and running on commodity hardware relatively quickly. Nothing wrong with that. And then, of course, we've got containerization, because everything's going to be solved by shoving it into a big box that looks exactly the same as the other big box. Sorry, I'm really cynical about all this. No, we got containerization. And we got to control exactly how the environment would look and feel and interact with our software and how our software was running. And it would look the same in our development environment in operations. What this led to, underneath it all, was still a physical server running this somewhere. We still had resources. We still had bits and bytes. We still had memory modules. We still had registers. We still had network interfaces. We still had physical cards and hardware slotted together. And we still need the knowledge to run all these things. So 10 years ago, the push to software as a service really started in earnest. We got faster and faster at building software. But we still had to have this leased or on-premise hardware. And provisioning machines just took a long time. It took a long time because you had to get it right, exactly the same way we had to get software right, 5, 10 years before that. So we needed specialists who were really good at taking the risk out of all these moves, because we started to get these disparities between operations cadence and developer cadence. Yeah? Operations could move only so fast because it just took a long time to get a new cluster of servers up and running because you just wanted to test your database cluster. But developers could run at a much faster pace. So we came up with this cunning new title that was going to usher us into the new world and allow us to do everything so much faster. That title was, of course, DevOps. And DevOps became this safety blanket. It's okay, we've got DevOps. The belief that everything would be okay in this world of hares and turtles, of two teams moving at different cadences, working differently, because, hey, somebody could just write some scripts. Well done. And don't get me wrong, there's been so many vast improvements to the way we write software that have come out of the DevOps movement, the idea that we have developers who know operational code. The trouble is, we really like shiny. Developers just like new things. DevOps people are no different. We start moving really, really fast onto this new tool, and then something distracts us over here, and we're going to go and build that, and then somebody over here, and then nobody actually comes up with something that's mature and really easy to use for people who aren't DevOps. When you haven't got a million hours of time to go and dive into how Kubernetes runs. I'm ragging on Kubernetes today in lots of different talks, so I apologize about that. Or how Terraform actually works when you're building your application. Because we believed we'd free ourselves from hardware completely as developers. We kind of fooled ourselves into this myth. We really wanted to take that red pill. We wouldn't have to care about what modules we're in, how much memory we've got, because it was all just going to be a platform. It's all just going to be resources. Hey, you can have as much memory as you like. Hey, it's okay. It's just ethereal, virtual. It doesn't work like that in real life, does it? So we didn't free ourselves from hardware. We're still here. We woke up. Unfortunately, we took the blue pill. Not that blue pill. So we still have to understand memory, registers, CPUs, how our things work, the physical hardware that runs underneath everything. It's still key to the way that we build software. In fact, all we've actually done, in my opinion, is make everything a whole heap more complex. Gone are the days when you could build a web application and it was just a PHP app with a CGI bin with some pill scripts in. How many people have built those apps? Yeah. How many people still build those apps? No, sorry. Now we have everything being delivered over the web. I don't just mean web applications. I mean desktop software that's updating because it's pinging a server somewhere and then pulling down a new package. Chrome, I'm looking at you. We've gone and sidled developers of all kinds with so much more tooling, so much more complexity. Should I be using microservices? Should I be containerizing? Should I be breaking up my monolith? The scary thing is not that these questions are being asked. The scary thing is that we have so many application developers who have no frame of reference to make the right decision. Because they've forgotten. They've forgotten how to actually run stuff on their own server. They've forgotten how the server actually plugs together. They've forgotten how the physical things work. Because we've let them. We've given them this safety blanket. It's okay, DevOps will take care of it. It's okay, it's a platform. So application developers have become much worse at taking into account the physical limitations and constraints of running software, in my opinion, in my theory, I should say. And you can chastise me later if you completely disagree. And I'm an application developer, so I'm ragging on my own kind. But it's your fault. So instead, we've come to believe in the cloud, or the clown. That was the best web talk ever, yeah. Instead of calling it the cloud, if anybody ever says the cloud, translate them and say that the clown. It just makes it so much more real. So in short, excuse my French, we're screwed. We screwed the pooch. We've destroyed the ability to make meaningful changes to software because we've hidden things. We've abstracted things. It's a whole bunch of leaky buckets all the way down. Okay, that was the downside of my talk. We've got here. We are where we are. This is life. Okay? Somehow we've got to keep moving forward. And, you know, we're all going to go to a party after this, so let's all leave upbeat. Yay! So we've got to keep going forward. How do we get over this? How do we get over this developers' analysis paralysis when they come to the tooling that you guys use day in, day out? You know, how do we actually help everybody? Well, let's all get together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Sorry, you can do that, that's fine. I don't have any problems with people singing Kumbaya. But what I'm saying is you should all come together. So part of it is education and inclusion. So one of the biggest problems in software development today is the lack of developer education around this tooling. But I hire developers, I work with developers, and then I have to teach them all of these things that happen underneath the hood. We've got a whole bunch of people who've kind of been educated that to deploy a piece of software, all they do is git push. Now I'm taking the piss out of Heroku. So we need to own up that this is a failure. This is a failure of DevOps. Not that it was easy to push, and that's what a release meant, but that we weren't telling them what was happening underneath the hood. We weren't being educative to the rest of the team. Okay, this is my pet gripe right now. We've got to stop reinventing the wheel. Do I use CloudFormation? Do I use Terraform? Do I use Rocket? Do I use Docker? Do I use Kubernetes? Do I use Mesos? I actually don't care. I don't care about what the answer is. What I care about is that organizations are consistent. And I've gone completely against what somebody, was it Ken said this morning? That, you know, that people should be free to use the tools that they want to use. Have freedom to pick new tools, totally. But half of the cognitive dissonance between developers and DevOps is the fact that you guys use so many different tools, and the tool you use today is different to the one you're going to be using tomorrow. Embrace the change. So how do you expect us to keep up? How do you actually expect us to kind of keep up with what you're doing while we're also keeping up with application development? So in my opinion, and I'm going to say this again, this is only my opinion, and you should take it with a grain of salt. Harmony is much, much more productive than everybody going in their own way. So, you know, I used to work at Xero. I was chief architect for a number of years. 6 years, I helped grow that company from 20 developers, and I left and there were 500 or something. The one thing we did a little bit wrong was we were so meritocratous. Is that a word? We're such a meritocracy? That anybody could pick any tooling that they really wanted to run with. And it became that every single desk had a different tool running, or built their software in a slightly different way. And it becomes really messy when you want people to actually learn about what's going on with the software. Because Happy Path is easy. Like, deploying good software that just runs is everybody's dream, but it's never going to just happen. Like, you're never going to get software that runs in complete good mode. I was trying to find a way to phrase that. Runs without errors for its lifetime. And I'd like, if one of you guys have got the secret to that, tell me. You know, you're going to have to debug error states. You're going to have to find out what's going wrong. And that's where knowing your tooling and having a lot of people who are working in the same way and on the same tools is deeply important. Whew. So we've also got to reduce the number of fiefdoms within our organizations. I mean, everybody's going to talk about this. Like, everybody knows this. And I'm sorry, I don't have a silver bullet for how you do it. I just know that this is deeply important, and we have to break this mold. We have to break the fact that there's these walls between operations and development, between DevOps and everybody else, because DevOps are cool and rise above it all. No, we have to be completely zen, you know, all get along. And I'm very aware that this is a wishy-washy statement, and I apologize for that. But the conversations over the next few years just have to be about breaking these down, breaking down the walls. And part of it is the fact that you guys have to stop being responsible for everything that you write. So all of the tooling that you write, all of those scripts that you write, all of the things that you put into your organization to put live, stop being responsible for them all the time. Like when the change comes through, make the developer make the change. Make the developer change that script. Make the developer understand how this thing is running in production, how this tooling is working. You can still be the owner of those tools. You're the font of all knowledge. When they get stuck and they've completely wiped out your test environment, you're the one that they should come and talk to. But they should be the ones making those changes. Like application developers need to know how their applications are running on a very high level, even. Like they need to know. The other side of it is that the assets that we write that deploy things to production, so whether they're Docker files, whether they're deploy scripts, whether they're task definitions, whether they're something else I can't quite think of right now, they should live with the application code that they're actually deploying, in my opinion. I'm going to say that a lot, because this is all, I'm just going to reinforce that mode. Because how the code runs is as much an artifact of the code as the code itself. That sounds really wrong now I say that out loud again. The idea is that if you're in one place, one application, you don't want to be context switching out of that application to go and fix the deploy scripts, go and work out why things are going wrong with something that's not directly the code of that application. So we need to get better at co-locating the code together. We need to create the pit of success. How many people have heard this phrase, the pit of success? Oh, not that many. It's my favorite phrase. So the idea is that you need to make it so bloomingly difficult to not fall into the pit of success that everybody succeeds. Because everybody will just fall. Like, if you're on the edge of a pit, you're going to fall in. Make sure that pit is a successful pit, not a painful pit. So the ways that we do that are we give people easy ways to fail. But easy ways to fail that don't cripple them. So you give them really repeatable test environments. You give them test scripts. You give them ways that they can deploy without destroying production. You make it so that when they fail, they can still go forward. Or the default for any tool that you use does the right thing, not the wrong thing. So there aren't all these security checks and security checklists that you have to go down to run the tool. By default, it's going to do the right thing. And if you happen to work really hard, you'll make this thing do the wrong thing. That's what the pit of success is all about. And we all have to be focused on giving people who are not our team a pit of success to fall into. So if you remember one thing, make people fall into the pit of success. I'm gonna kind of dig a big hole, put a sign up saying pit of success, and everybody can throw me into it. It's fine. So finally, and I've probably gone really fast, but that's all right. We've got something better to go on to. So maybe DevOps isn't made up as such, but I just hate this idea that we're separating between developers and DevOps, between operations and developers and DevOps, between security, operations, developers, and DevOps, between testers, security. No, okay, you get the point. What I'm trying to say is that there's no longer room for application developers who know nothing about the platform, who know nothing about the hardware, who know nothing about how this deploys. There's no longer room for operations people who know nothing about how applications run in general. There's no longer room for security testers who know nothing about applications, platforms, et cetera, et cetera. We actually have to all be DevOps. Everybody needs something out of the DevOps toolchain. Everybody needs to know these things. It needs to stop being a term that means somebody else, and it means a term that's everybody. So that's why I think DevOps needs to die and be born again into the new world where we're all happy. When I ran through that, that was half an hour, but that's gone much, much quicker than half an hour, so I apologize for that. But I do want to know if there are any thoughts in the audience on my thesis. Yes? I've got 5 minutes.
Oh, you want to keep going? Okay.
No, I don't. I want somebody to ask me a question.
So I guess being an application developer, do you not think that code has kind of gone the same way? Like instead of writing binary zeros and ones, we've abstracted that layer up quite a lot compared to what it was before. Is that not similar to what's now happening in that space? That we're actually just abstracting away the complex parts so that we don't have to deal with them as much as we would normally?
Totally. I think we've created a situation where you can be an awesome XYZ developer without actually knowing what's going on under the hood. And the way that I find application developers who do that is when they're reading a stat trace, usually. That's where it all comes to the head. It's like they get a stat trace and they actually have no idea what this stack even is, let alone how to debug from it. And I'm not going to name names of languages because there are certain stat traces that are just worse than others, but there are also certain languages that attract some people who are not necessarily who are more junior in that respect, I guess. Is that an inclusive way to say that? I don't know. But yes, totally, it's an issue, and we do need to get over that. But again, it comes down to education and inclusion. Like, if you, as a developer, cannot get away from how your application is running, from monitoring it, from logging it, from actually having some performance metrics around how your application is running, and being responsible for those as a team, then you're never going to learn those things. That's how you learn, is by being exposed to them. And it's not necessarily the language's responsibility to expose you to them. It's you running applications, in my opinion. Hey, I said that again. Cool, that's going to be my phrase for today.
So with everybody being obsessed with containers, I mean, one thing that we're seeing coming out is company joint bringing out bare metal cloud solutions. So what you can simply do as a developer or whoever you might be is set up your own tiny little cloud and with bare metal and just to remind yourself that it exists.
Yeah.
It seems things are going in that direction. It's just a comment.
Yeah, cool. I didn't know about the joint tooling for bare metal stuff, but that's totally a cool thing to go and do. Is like, go and set up a server. Like, buy a computer and put it together. Like, how many people have built a computer here? Yeah, exactly. Like, I wonder how many people, like, who are coming out of university have built a computer. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Hopefully all of them, but I don't know.
Rumor has it you can put Docker on a Raspberry Pi.
Wouldn't advise it. So that was rumor has it you can put Docker on a Raspberry Pi, which I wouldn't advise. Yeah.
Hey, so you were sort of saying earlier that DevOps has sort of abstracted all of this away, so developers don't need to care about how their application is running anymore because you've got these tools and it's all sort of magically done for them. So I'm curious because I haven't experienced this, but before DevOps, did developers care about how their application was running? Did they have to deal with the logging that they had?
Touche. I'd like to say they had to, because there was no tooling that made it simple for them. Like, okay, they had to throw it over the wall to an ops team, but we all agree that that's a wrong way to approach software per se. So yeah, I don't know. Like, but I just think we are in a unique power position that we can actually help affect this story, affect real application developers.
I just want to help you out a little bit there. Because if you go way back, right way back to the beginning, there were no ops. It was just dev.
Yeah, exactly.
Engineering, even.
Yeah.
Punch cards or?
Exactly, punch cards, mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
I'm no dev, okay? Don't you think that the abstraction helps developers to learn languages more quicker?
Totally learn the language. What it doesn't help them do is get over the error states. So, and that's where the problems, I want to say something hits the fan, that's where you'll be up till 3 a.m. in the morning because something's going wrong in production, and because you've been abstracted away from how your code is running, you've got no idea how to fix it. You know, that's what I worry will be the end state of the road we're going down, and I want to just stop it right now before we get too far down that road.
It works on my machine.
Works on my machine, yeah. You know, hey, I did if, and then I did while, semicolon. Why on earth isn't that breaking out?
What are your thoughts on developing for serverless technologies like Lambda or something like that?
Funny you should ask me that, but...
The question was, what are your thoughts for developing on so-called serverless like Lambda technology?
So let me tell you a story about a startup called Hoist. No, so my previous startup was building a serverless technology company. So the first platform for running serverless code before there was other platforms, nameless, they shall remain, that run serverless code. It certainly fits a lot of use cases, but I'm not talking, you can't build a whole application particularly well using serverless technologies yet. Maybe it will come, maybe it won't. And they'll end up with a whole bunch of different error cases and use cases that will cause us all to have to re-educate ourselves again. But we're not there yet, so I don't really have an opinion yet. But once they're in mainstream and lots of applications are running against them, then I'll revisit that position. But they're great at the moment for those little snippets of code that people write, the little integration space code that people write. And you know, I was heavily in that space for a long, long time, and they certainly fulfill a need. But I don't think that's the enterprise or the product journey that we're going to go on for the next 5 years at least. We've got a long way of bedding that in. Did that answer your question? Kinda. Come and talk to me afterwards. It's a great question.
One quick one. I have a problem with all of the different tools that are used, and you learn Angular 1 and then 3 weeks later it's obsolete, and then you're not supposed to be using Angular 2, you're on React now, and you're doing your builds and deploying the serverless, and where it was Docker that you were just typing it like used to. And to some extent, I kind of declared new knowledge bankruptcy and said, do you think there's an argument for just-in-time learning, or making sure a few people on your team understand something, but if I spent all my time learning everything that is used, then I probably wouldn't have any time for dev?
True. I think knowledge fatigue is a massive problem at the moment. You look at, if you're in the JavaScript world, which I am, NPM, packages update 3 times a day on average, you're constantly keeping up with updates. And that's the rate of change of some modern languages. And just being a developer and keeping up with that is crazy hard. I'm not talking about kind of going deep on all of these technologies, but at least being aware of that they exist. Of this is how we deploy, this is how it's happening. Like even if it's just your DevOps team or your ops team giving a presentation to the rest of the team and saying, these are the tools that we use. This is what's happening when you push deploy. That's kind of step one. And then, okay, yeah, the rest of it, you don't need to go deep until something goes wrong. But you do need people who can then answer those questions. And that's where you guys come in. It's like owning the deep kind of knowledge on some of those tools, not necessarily the broad knowledge on everything. So I believe everybody needs to be broader than they currently are. And they just you need to be specialists and deep in certain areas. And that's what kind of your specialty is, I guess.
Okay.
Cool, so that's me anyway. So I work for 8i. We put humans into virtual reality.
And you're hiring, I believe.
And we're hiring. So yeah, well, everybody's hiring, aren't they? Yeah. Thanks very much.